That's not how they need to be engaged. So here's what happened in Montana. This is what happened when I had a room full of Youth for Christ leaders. They brought a girl to me out of northern Ohio here, and soon as this girl, or the one in Montana, went into this fake demon state, and a subpersonality is like, I am Python, you know. Well, I just looked at the one. This is years ago, and we learned it again. We had to learn the hard way, but when we learned it, I can see now the difference is pretty clear. To the guys in Montana 2 months ago, 10 people are in there yelling, in the name of Jesus, come out, and they're yelling louder. And every time they would yell louder, and then this personality, I am Beelzebub, and even like it's roaring and battling and fighting, and nothing was happening. So in Montana, I did the same thing as I did back here. I just touched the person on the head, and I said, stop it. And everybody stopped, they all looked at me like, what are you doing? And I just said, I spoke to the person. I said, listen, you're not a demon, and you're playing games, and I know who you are. Stop it. And I am demon, and I'm like, stop it. We know who you are. If you're a real demon, do something supernatural. And I did the same thing to this girl, that had the Python spirit. That after, now listen, this is what occurred. Within a few minutes, the Python's coming up. All the people there were ready to pray. They were all getting ready. All of a sudden, I am Python, and they make this ferocious sound, and everybody's praying, and I'm looking at them, so I just challenged. I said, no, you're not a demon. Yes, I am. And we argued. I am a demon. And I said, no, you're not a demon. Yes, I am a demon. You're not getting me out. And I said, you're not a demon. And they said, yes, I am. And I said, no, you're not. I said, do something supernatural, speak backwards. So finally, they just stopped. Their shoulders went down, and they looked at me and they said, how did you know? And I said, because you didn't feel like a demon. And just the Spirit of God's here. And I just got a sense and a witness. And so I challenged it. And this personality looks at me, and everybody's in the room looking, and says, well, I was trained to be Python, and my goal was to make Christians just mess with Christians and wear them out and not let them get to the real stuff inside. So that's one. I apologize for this cough. I'm drinking some coffee here.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I was.
Okay, I think I'm okay. So that's part of them, and I know that they've met. The personality's doing it usually knows that they're playing this game. The girl in Montana, when we finally said, "Quit it! You're not a demon. Quit playing these people." They kind of shrugged their shoulders too, and then they looked, and I said, "Let me talk to," and I named the main person, and they came back.
So they'll let it reemerge if you ask to talk. If you tell it, let me talk to Jerry.
Right? Yeah. You could, and you could do that with other personalities too. Matter of fact, once you start working with, now when you're first dealing with a chosen one, that nobody inside personalities are observing you, so you're observed long before you even know, and you're being listened to and sized up and all the rest. But you might also have warfare. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to be going on. But once you do get to engage them, and they're really wanting to get help, and and if they want to come to Jesus and be delivered, you may end up beginning to talk to, little personalities will come up, then others, then pretty soon you get to trained ones, and as long as you keep going in the goal of clearing out all demonic stuff, breaking programming, and helping the subpersonalities be healed and come back to one person. If that process is continued, they can come back to one whole person, be utterly, completely free of all programming, of all triggers. But the problem is you have the covenant on the outside pulling them back. You have, in the beginning anyway, you have runners taking them back. You have this back and forth thing happening. Um, that's why we're recommending safe housing, and the more you can do at the beginning to deal with any of the folks, the better, and so forth. They can get out. But the good news is that no matter what the battle is, those who come to Jesus and want out and want freedom and want all of that, they hate the dark side, and they want free of all that's been done to them, and they can find it. They can get that.
Yeah. So I do have something I want to ask you about. But No, that's interesting. I was going to ask you, do you, when you're dealing with a coven like that, I mean, it would seem like you really do need to get them secluded away from their coven and someone with them to help them. If you start processing, you got to keep processing, working through those issues to bring wholeness. Otherwise, they're going to get sucked back in.
Right. I mean, we have a number of cases right now. One case, we've had probably 15 meetings with the individual, kind of hidden away from coven stuff. We've helped hide her out during ritual time so she wouldn't have to go to a ritual. But the problem is she lives right in among them, hours from us, and they're constantly getting her, and so our recommendation is, you're going to have to go away from the area. You're going to have to, you know, even if you was to get completely healed in everything here, other than God's direct, engagement and protection, um, they're right around you. They're part of your family members. So you have to break away. You have to get away to get fully free. It's like in the book of Acts, Saul of Tarsus becomes Paul, and he's doing he's preaching Jesus. They find out about a plot. The townspeople were going to come and kill him. So what did the disciples do? It's right in the book of Acts. They took him to the wall of the city, the hole in the wall. They put him through in a basket, and they actually got they safe housed him in a sense. They got him out, physically got him out of the city, because of the crowd that would have come and got him, and they found out about the plot. And that's true in human trafficking. That's true in satanic ritual abuse, safe housing. Getting them out, in order to really help them is a major advantage in seeing them get completely free quicker.
So those safe houses, in your book, you talk about uh, how they have the enemy, they have their spiritual strong places, but we can have our spiritual strong places too. And are those safe houses, like, are they like specifically prayed over and fortified to be that strongholds?
Yeah, I mean they really are. I mean what we're not going to tell the public what we do totally now on that. And because we really believe that a string of safe houses need to be put out there. But yeah, the safe houses need to have believers. We do some other stuff at times. We've had some of them move from their cities locally and actually get a small job here and get a little apartment. Even that's more helpful, though coven members have been known to come here, and we've had to put guards and people to protect, and so it's a big issue. Um, yeah, it is, and coven members. I mean, if you start engaging, it's very possible you're gonna have a goat's head laid on your front porch. You're gonna have phone calls that come in and say we're gonna kill you. You can have people show up and check out your church. When a hooded person came into a church I was pastoring and came right up to where I was standing to declare they're going to steal my daughter and they're going to sacrifice her. My daughter was 2 at the time. I had to respond. And the one group with the federal officer's wife out of Cleveland, they came to my house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and there was a need to respond. Now, I'm saying that this is really real. I mean, look in Syria, look in Sudan, look in other parts of the world. There's real Christians who have been martyred, killed, persecuted, run out of town. There's real enemies. And I'm going to say that underground Satanism, this kind of Satanism, because they have a plot and a plan. And if you don't mess with them right now anyway, they're not going to mess with you. But if you start helping victims get out, if you start exposing, because they're involved in the human trafficking side, the sex side, the money, they're involved in pure criminality. I mean, this is criminal. They've had sex. All of the people in these kind of covens have had sex with children. All of their leadership have all had sex with children. Specific rituals called marriage to the beast. So you're talking about high level criminal activity, let alone the blood sacrifices and the rest. So their law is secrecy, and they would just as soon. They don't really want to kill a chosen one because of the value they place in them, and they always believe they can give them back, but they also want to protect their leadership. And so over the years there's been a lot of threat, uh, blood on a doorpost, messages, mailed bones, blood and bones in a letter, all those kind of things. And you have to either say, I'm going to get out of this. I'm not going to do this any longer. Or you have to, decide. And for me, Nehemiah chapter 4 is definitive on that kind of, response to lethal threat. And what Nehemiah did in Nehemiah 4 was, I think, what we need to do now is to stand, declare the word of the Lord, and continue God's mission, regardless of the threat, and see what God does. So I'm here after 30 some years of this to say, number one, even though we've had people with weapons and stuff to protect and do things in some of the cases, number one is Psalm 91. God has protected us. God has been with us. God has guarded us. Uh, and not that we haven't been, there's a lot to, but again, I'm not locally pastoring a church anymore to where, no local church has to make this the center of their life. To where in this ministry, and now I did this all along while I pastored a church, and we had a number of multiples in our church, and our church was known for the deliverance aspect. But, I didn't preach chosen ones every Sunday morning. So, but but I think the stronger local churches become in the full unleashing of Scripture and equipping and so forth, the more able they are to understand the warfare in the city. And this is why part of what we do to bring that exposure. And I think all that happened with us is like Ezekiel 8. God just simply tapped on the shoulder and said, I'm going to take you down in here and show you these things. And God willed it. God wanted it to be known. One, because in the future he's going to bring judgment, heavy judgment on it. This was an abomination. God calls it an abomination to him. Human sacrifice, the demonization, and all that they're doing to transmute a human is an abomination to God. And so that's what I feel. I think little by little, God's taken us in further and further and further to see what we see. And it is really ugly. And more is coming, though. And so we need, our goal is to, scream it out. That's why the book was hurriedly, the biggest battle in the world occurred during the writing of that book finally. And then the person that was the editor, when they handed us the stuff to send in, you'll notice some editing errors. A portion of the unedited part, was given because the person was taken to the hospital because they claimed they thought that the person had an aneurysm or a stroke. We sent the stuff in to be produced, and that's why we haven't changed anything yet. There's an editing issue coming up, but there's about 23 editing errors. It was a real battle, and just to get that book out. And that book's like a third of what we could have put out, but it was already big enough, and we couldn't.
Yeah, anytime you feel like putting the other 2/3, you feel free.
Well, by God's grace, it's coming. The second one, the second side is called "The Voice of an Ancient Hate," the sequel to Black Awakening, and then there's a third segment. So by God's, that's why we're not doing any more conferences right now. We've been to so many places, so many conferences. What most people don't know is that we're on the field with a team. We take teams into New York, and we were in Lilydale. I was going to tell you, your friends probably know about Lilydale. Ask them about Lilydale, New York. And we're all over Pennsylvania, and we've been to 70 cities, and so we're going to be all over in our actual outreach that targets where victims are, but it's evangelistic and it's with prayer, and we call it a REAP trip.